Welcome. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and this is the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Hey there, and welcome to the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. This is Pastor Jeremiah Reiner of Calvary Bible Church with a brand new episode here. This is episode 140, actually, so we're closing in on that 150 mark. Hard to believe that, but we've got with us our good friend tonight, Justin Bise. He's an elder at Bass Chapel Baptist Church. They're in Sir Garnsville, Tennessee. He and his wife, Jennifer, they live in Kingsport, Tennessee with their two children. Justin's also one of the main organizers and leaders of All Things Deeply Rooted Conference, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So, Justin, thank you for being on the Deeply Rooted Podcast again.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I got to host before I was ever a guest, so a second-time guest. I don't know that I'll ever catch the Joshes, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, the Joshes are probably Hall of Fame out in front of everybody right now, but you do hold the only spot to ever guest host the Deeply Rooted Podcast, so I may leave it there for you. That way nobody ever touches that record.
I appreciate it.
Let's talk about the conference real quick. I think a lot of people ask that, especially when we probably run into people and invite them to the conference, and that's really what this episode is designed for us to, as we joked before we got on the air here, it's a kind of an infomercial for Deeply Rooted Conference. So tell us and explain the story about how all this came about a couple of years ago.
I love telling this story. It's the providence of God all inside it, around it, over it, under it. It's beautiful. My family about 4 years ago moved to Bass Chapel with David Rossetti. We used to go to church with them years before when they were members at Ridgeview Baptist, and I knew Dave and I, we kind of had similar mindset when it came to theology. So we moved down to Bass Chapel to help serve with them. It didn't take very long, and I said, "Hey, Dave, you ever thought about doing a conference?" And his eyes lit up. He's like, "Yeah, absolutely, I have." So in my mind, at the time, it was maybe we'll do something small, maybe just a few hours on a Saturday, have 3 or 4 preachers, just come down to Bass, and kind of like a preach-a-thon. I've heard of churches doing preach-a-thons.
Yeah.
But that was late 2019. What happened to early 2020? The big C word showed up and just kind of messed everybody's plans up.
Right.
So we just kind of had that on the back burner. We talk about it, bring it up every once in a while. So fast forward to the fall of 2021. My family, Dave Rossetti's family, we're all at the G3 conference. And I see this guy walking by me, and I'm like, that guy looks familiar. And I had previously contacted Shepherd's Rock because I was leading Role Ambassadors for the Holston Valley Baptist Association. And I had contacted them last minute. Our mission speaker wasn't able to come. And I talked to Jason Francis, actually, and said, "Hey, it's kind of last minute. Would you guys like to talk about missions for this camp thing we're having?" Jason says, "Do you know what we believe?" And I said, "Yeah, that's why I called you." And so anyway, so fast forward back to G3. I see this guy walking. I watched some of Shepherd Rock's sermons here and there, and I'm like, I think that guy lives in Kingsport. So I went up. I'm like, "You live in Kingsport?" He's like, "Yeah." Or he lives in Gate City, I guess. But so I'm like, "Hey, I'm Justin Bise. I talked to Jason, blah, 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 and all that." And so I met Josh for the first time at G3. So
And by
almost
Josh,
every,
you're talking about Josh Banks, right?
sorry,
Yeah,
yes, last names are important when
yeah,
it comes to the first name Josh, right?
right.
So Dr. Joshua Banks, author of the book Yes, It Matters, published by G3 Ministries. How's that?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Okay. So we do sometimes Friday night scripture reading on Facebook Live for Bass Chapel. So the Friday of that G3, I did it, and I saw a comment from this guy, and he said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm from Kingsport. I'd like to meet you guys." Well, it was Damon Joseph,
okay.
pastor of Christ Bible Church in Kingsport. So that Saturday morning, I just we we messaged back and forth. I went over, met him, took a selfie with him, said, "Hey, good to meet you. Well, maybe we'll have to get together and do something sometime." So those are like the little seeds, me and Dave talking, then meeting Josh Banks, meeting Damon Joseph. Um, Fast forward a little bit more, we're into 2022, kind of springtime. And I'd been on the Founders website. It's founders.org. It's Baptist churches recovering the gospel, right?
Right.
The early Baptist churches in America all believed in the sovereignty of God, the doctrines of grace. They held to, most of them, a version of the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. That is every single church that started the Southern Baptist Convention. We were Southern Baptists at the time. So that's Founders. Not every church on founders.org is Southern Baptist. There's a lot of independent churches, but they all agree to the sovereignty of God.
Right.
And so I would look on there periodically, see if there's any churches in the area. And I thought, hey, maybe we should have like a pastor fellowship. So yeah, Dave and I had mentioned a conference a long time ago, but really me contacting these other pastors was really to say, hey, you're not alone in believing the doctrines of grace. You're not alone in believing in God's sovereignty in all things. And it was, maybe let's try to get together, have a little fellowship. Um, so that happened. I think it was May of 2022. A couple of weeks before that, your podcast, you had Dr. Joshua Banks
Yeah.
on to talk about all millennialism.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first episode I ever heard of your podcast. And so, knowing I had texted Josh and Damon, said, "Hey, you want to get together?" And I started reaching out to some other of the founders friendly churches, seeing if anybody wanted to meet together. I don't think at the time y'all were on Founders,
We
but
were
I
not
sent
at
you.
that time. No, we weren't.
But I sent you a message. I'm like, "Hey, are you like friendly to the doctrines of grace?" And you said, "Yeah." So we had this first meeting scheduled. It was on a Wednesday in Kingsport, just inviting some of the local pastors that I ran into. You weren't able to make it because you were working. But at that first meeting, the first time I ever met Vern Hall. And I've gotten to know Vern over the last year and a half or so. Man, I love Vern. He's always encouraging.
Yeah.
And that's why Vern is the director of evangelism
Right.
for Deeply Rooted Conference as a ministry. I said, Vern, you don't really have to do anything differently. If you'll just share on the Deeply Rooted Facebook page everything that you're already doing, um, that's it, man. But he's such an encouragement. Beside him was Dave Rossetti, my pastor, down at Bass Chapel. Beside him was Josh Banks from the Shepherd's Rock. Across from him was Robert Pruitt from Christ Bible Church. Beside him was Damon Joseph from Christ Bible Church. And then last person there was me. And I remember making the joke there. At the time, I was not an elder. And I said, hey, since I'm the only elder here, I'm going to pray over our food. Or
That's funny.
I'm the only non-elder here. I'm going to pray over our food. So, but it really started out. It's, hey, how can we maybe work together, encourage each other, maybe have fellowship amongst our churches because we teach not exactly the same doctrine. No church teaches exactly the same doctrine.
Right.
We have great unity. We don't have uniformity, but we all can agree on certain essentials,
Yeah.
and that was the birth of it. It was being a pastor. It can be discouraging when you feel like you're on an island. You're the only one. That was the whole point of that meeting. And Dave Rossetti, he had to leave. He had to get back to work. And before he left, he said, "Hey, mention the conference." And so that was really an afterthought. It was the very end of the meeting. We're like, "Hey, what do you guys think about doing a conference?" So we're like, "Hey, how about this fall doing something?" Um, and then it was maybe brought up, "Hey, well, maybe let's do it in a year from now."
Yeah.
And then I think it was Damon who suggested let's maybe just do a smaller one this year while we're preparing for next year. So that was kind of the birth, the genesis of Deeply Rooted Conference. Sent you that message saying, "Can we use the name?" And hey, that was great. It's all the providence of God. That's why I love telling this story.
Yeah, I had no copyright on it, so when you asked me, I thought, I'm not at liberty to say no or yes to that, so wear it out. And fortunate enough to be a part of it. And like you said, we had our first one last year. I thought it went excellent. Josh was actually kind enough to host it there at Shepherd's Rock Bible Church, so that's where we had our first one. Great time, good turnout, good fellowship. Just really enjoyed the whole experience. And like you said, Damon with a really good idea, starting the first one, but at the same time, wheels already turning for a second one so that we could, I guess, in a way, learn on the fly, but at the same time, really get ourselves prepared for the second one. And I guess that kind of leads into another question you and I wanted to touch on. And a lot of people probably ask this, why do we charge to come to this conference, even though it's local? And the majority of the time, most of the people coming to this are extremely local. But explain to everybody why it is necessary that we do have to do that as part of what we're doing here.
Well, when we first started this, my thought on it was we should charge something. I mean, there is a lot of work goes into it.
Sure.
All the churches that are working together to put this thing on, we're not mega churches.
No,
I
not at
mean,
all.
not churches with huge budgets. So I mean, yeah, we could put on a little 1 day conference, but we wanted to make it, you know, uh, really an experience, an enjoyable experience, and to let you know you're getting something of worth.
Right.
And we can always say, "Oh, they're having this conference at such and such church. Oh, I got an invite for it on Facebook. Yeah, it's free. I might go. I might not go." Um, but having some kind of a charge, there's a lot of expense that goes along with it.
Right.
I won't mention to my wife how many books that I've bought for giveaways and things like that. Just things that come out, and we've had a lot of people give money. A lot of churches give money to the conference itself, but there's a little charge, just for the fact that, hey, there is expense. Buying a
Sure.
sign ain't cheap.
No.
Uh, buying little cards just to pass out and let your friends know that we're having a conference, it's not cheap. So it, it's something of worth knowing that you're having an experience. We were able to have some folks with booths come in last year to
Right.
talk about their ministries. We were able to get some books to give away. I'll tell you, if people didn't get their money's worth in books last year,
Right.
then there's something wrong, because we got a lot of great books to give out last year. We'll talk a little bit about that later for this year too. So
Yeah, as far as registration for those that may not be signed up right now, obviously we had an early bird rate of about $29, which again, Lord willing, if we're again not to let the cat out of the bag, but I think people know we are going to plan a third one. So that being said, when that's opened, we highly encourage people jump on that early bird rate. That is a big deal, and there was multiple reasons for that. Obviously, great discount. But two, that lets us know way ahead of time what we're kind of preparing for. And so that's a big deal to be able to kind of get that going. But as far as registration right now, you can do that at deeplyrootedpodcast.com. Very easy to sign up there. Right now, $39 for all adults. You did a great job of posting this the last few weeks. We're giving a discounted rate for college and seminary students. So if you're in college right now, you're a seminary student, $20 for you. Just make sure, and I want to make sure I get this correctly, you need to email deeplyrootedconference@gmail.com for that discount. Again, that's only for college and seminary students, but if you are and you plan on attending, deeplyrootedconference@gmail.com, and we'll get you hooked up there for a discounted rate. And good news, all kids under 18 are free. We just ask that you sign up there and grab a ticket, but other than that, we highly encourage people to come out. This is not a conference just for pastors, is it? I think I get that a lot from people, but clarify that for people. We had a lot of people from all different walks of the Christian spectrum last year, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there have been questions. Hey, is this just for pastors? And I hope when we say kids are free that people know this isn't just for pastors,
Sure.
because there shouldn't be any children pastors, should there be? But
Surely not, yeah.
um,
Some that behave like children, maybe, but that's another episode.
yeah, maybe some wild churches will let children into the pulpit every once in a while.
Yeah,
But the point being, yeah, we're letting you know kids are free. We want families there.
right. Yeah. And last year, the pretty healthy showing of that. I think some people still may not have known that, but we definitely want to let you know there's plenty of space there for your young kids, and we'd love to see a younger audience there. I think that'd be great this year to see. Certainly, teenage, preteen, whatever. We'd love to see that there. But as far as this year's theme, I know we had one last year. What is this year's centered around?
It's on the doctrine of assurance.
Why is that important?
Well, but the word tells us, 1 John, so that you may what? Know.
No, yeah,
It's not, hey, flip a coin. If God's in a good mood today, I'm going to heaven. If he's in a bad mood, I'm going to hell. No. He paid a price for you, Christian. He will not go back on his word.
yeah.
He is the covenant keeping God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He keeps his covenants. And his covenant, the new covenant in the blood of Christ, he will not go back on that.
Good stuff. And we're going to cover that in a lot of different avenues. I'm excited to see that from different vantage points about the passages that are going to be used to explain that in various areas. And because of that, we've got a lot of different speakers lined up in certain different roles. Some of them are going to be kind of in the main auditorium area there and we'll talk about where this is at in a moment. But as far as that goes, there will be main speakers in certain areas and certain sessions. We're also going to have breakout sessions as well during times where you're going to get an opportunity to hear multiple people, and there'll be multiple breakout sessions. So let's kind of run down the list here of these speakers and sort of talk about who these guys are and maybe what they're covering, if we know that up at this point. But starting with the first one here, and this is just a list I've got. This is in no particular order, by the way, because my name's at the bottom. So if you want to get mad about that, there you go. But Mike Abendroth will be the one probably coming from the furthest away. Let's at least say that. So let everybody know about who Brother Abendroth is, and really Doctrine of Assurance kind of in his wheelhouse, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Abendroth is a guy I've listened to on his podcast for years. He's got a YouTube channel. Great stuff on there. A lot of people became aware of him. I think his first YouTube video was called "Where is Beth Moore's Husband?" But Mike he went to the Master's Seminary, got his master's there. Went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, got his doctorate there. He's written several books. Last fall, he compiled some works of the Puritans into a 31-day guide on assurance. So I don't remember if we had the theme or if we had Mike first when we decided to do this. We knew we were having this. Mike was actually an advisor for Josh Banks when he
Right.
was in the program at the Masters. So at that very first meeting, when we were talking about, oh, maybe bringing somebody in, he and I both said Mike Abendroth. And I'm like, okay, yeah, if we can get him, I'm like, I'll email him because I had some interaction with him, well, through Twitter, but also when we started our ambassador evangelism study group, where we meet on Saturdays, go through a book. It started in Mike's book called Sexual Fidelity. At the time, I mean, that was 3 years ago, I guess. So at the time, my son was 12. Another boy that I had taught, um, same age, and then we had some others come in and out, but those two were in there the bulk of the time, going through Mike's book, Sexual Fidelity. So well, I had emailed back and forth with him a few times, just discussing that. He was actually going to FaceTime the boys, just to talk to them, encourage them,
Yeah.
things like that. Then he almost died, so he got COVID 2 years ago and was in the hospital. Um, Never went on the vent, but he was on high flow oxygen.
Hmm.
So yeah, he was very close to death from COVID right at 2 years ago. So praise the Lord, he did not die.
Right.
Uh, he's still able to minister. He's been able to make some series for American Gospel TV. One of them being Assurance, another one on law and gospel distinctives, and another one on sanctification. And I would say those are the two big aspects of assurance. Going back to our theme, is knowing the difference in law and gospel. Spurgeon said that to know the difference in law and gospel in Scripture is to be a master of theology.
Hmm.
Luther said something very similar. He said, but he gave you a little bump up. So Spurgeon said you're a master, but Luther said you're a doctor. So um, to know that difference, and also the sanctification, to know the difference in justification and sanctification. There are miserable Christians out there who don't understand the difference in their justification and their sanctification. They blend it, they merge them together, and they're going around not knowing if they're saved from one minute to the next because of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that Luther quote, when I look to myself, I don't see how I could be saved, but when I look to Christ, I don't see how I could be lost.
Right.
Another great quote along those lines, I've used both of these quotes many times from the pulpit. Robert Murray McShane says, "For every one look I take to myself, I give 10 looks to Christ."
Yeah, that's a
And
good one.
that is assurance in a nutshell,
Right.
looking to Christ. Anyway, we're talking, sorry.
No, you're
Uh,
good.
we were talking about Mike, but yeah, he's got a podcast, authored numerous books. We're excited to have him be coming down.
Yeah, our second speaker is going to be Sean Morris. Sean's a little bit closer in the state of Tennessee, but explain kind of his background and what he'll be helping us out with at the conference.
Yeah, Sean is a minister in the Presbyterian Church America. Those are the more conservative Presbyterians. I became aware of Sean through Presbycast. It's the oldest and biggest Presbyterian podcast out there. It's based out of Oak Ridge. One of his ruling elders I'd reached out to, his name is Brad Isbell, and asked about one of his pastors if they would want to come up and preach at the conference this year. And he gave me Sean's name. I listened to some of Sean's sermons on sermon audio. Was very impressed. Thought it was fantastic. I reached out to him. He was happy to do it. Sean now actually hosts a podcast. It's called Larger for Life. It's marching week by week through the Westminster Larger Catechism. He's also a doctoral student at Puritan Seminary with Joel Beakey, and he is the dean of something or another for Bright. Yeah, I've got it down really good. I've got my notes here,
Yeah.
but Bright, it is the Blue Ridge Institute for Theological Education. I think that's in Roanoke, if I'm not mistaken. So not too far from us. So he's very involved in rural theological education through Bright.
Awesome. Now, for the rest of them, most everybody we have left on the list here was at last year's. However, we have picked up one more from the Masters Church here at Kingsport. Brother Greg Sircone is going to be speaking for us this year. So just touch a little bit on who Greg is and how we got to kind of to know him as well.
Yeah, I was excited that Greg is jumping on board for this year. He was in attendance at last year's conference. He was originally scheduled to be at that original meeting of the Deeply Rooted Pastor Fellowship, but was unable to attend. So things kind of got rolling, but he's very encouraging brother. He's training men in his own church, the Master's Church there, encouraging them theologically. Does a great job expository preaching. I have watched many of his sermons on YouTube. Been very, very encouraged. He originally is from New York,
Right.
um, and moved down here a few years ago to pastor, and then they birthed the Master's Church. I think it was about 3 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want a little more info on Greg, and really for that matter, the rest of everybody we're covering here, and good Lord willing, on the two gentlemen that we had mentioned previously, there are previous podcasts that I've actually interviewed all these guys. So you can go back and listen to that on our YouTube channel and get a good feel for who Greg is and kind of his story. He's got a really good testimony coming out of Roman Catholicism and that background. So I think you'd appreciate that if you've got any kind of familiarity with that area. But on the list as well, coming back with us this year, and you've already touched on this gentleman who was at the original meeting, a good friend of ours, Brother Vern Hall from Free Gift Gospel Mission. Vern doing a great job there in Kingsport, just an evangelistic, whirlwind. I can't say enough about that guy and the work he does. Street preaching, the work he does, and just door-to-door evangelism. Like you said, he kind of heads up our evangelistic outreach there for all things deeply rooted and does a tremendous job. Former school teacher, and also I enjoyed this about him when I got to meet him, drywall guy. You wouldn't know that about Vern, but if you get a chance, talk to him about his drywall ability. He may help you out one day. Who knows? But Vern, just a great, great guy. I can't say enough about him. One of the most humble people you'll ever be around. Doing a tremendous work there in Kingsport at the Free Gift Gospel Mission. So we're looking forward to hearing Vern again this year. I thought he did an excellent job last year at the conference as well. I heard a lot of high remarks about him from other people. I'll say that. A lot of people came up to me really bragging on him. Here's another one, and I'll let you kind of take the info on this guy, but Christ Bible Church, Damon Joseph, we've already mentioned that and how you guys ran across each other there at G3. Tell us a little bit about Damon for those that might not be familiar with him.
Yeah, so Damon has pastored Christ Bible Church for several years now. It's in the Colonial Heights area. He kind of heads up our pastoral encouragement ministry. I don't remember what his official title is, Director of Pastoral Development, I think. But another just very encouraging guy. Loves to pour into men, loves to encourage, loves to teach, and just he's done a great job with our pastoral encouragement meetings, which we try to have every other month.
Yeah, and they've went really well so far. I just had one last month there on expository preaching. We just posted that on the podcast. If you didn't get to attend that and you happen to participate in that, teacher, preacher in your local church, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to a couple of those episodes. Josh Banks did an excellent job there. That was hosted at Damon's Church, like you said, at Christ Bible. So doing a really good job of that. And also, I'll say this, a plug. If you see us at the conference and you want more information about that and you're local here, Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, Upper North Carolina, wherever you may be, Eastern Kentucky, and you're within driving distance, find us. We'd love to get you on that email list and let you know about the things we're doing monthly or bi-monthly as best we can. Here's the next gentleman, and you probably know him as good as anybody on the list. David Rossetti. You've already talked about Dave is actually your pastor. So anything that we don't know about Dave that you want to let everybody know about now?
No, I mean Dave is just such an encouraging guy. I
Yes.
mean, we can say that about all these guys. I mean, that's just been the word that just comes up: encouraging, encouraging, encouraging. But you know, Dave, man, he's been teaching and preaching the Bible in context for 11 years as pastor at Bass Chapel. Prior to that, as Sunday school teacher, filling pulpits here and there. But it's such an encouragement. I don't know how he has done it for all these years. Not just being bivocational, but running his own business.
Right.
That's a little seems like a little more than a 40-hour a week job.
Yeah.
When you're running your own business, and then for many times, many years, he was doing Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday evening. So I hope that I've been able to take a little bit of a burden off of him here and there, doing some Wednesday nights or filling the pulpit. But I don't know how he's done it. It's by the grace of God alone. That's the only way that any of us do any of this. But
Right.
it's just he must run on 48-hour days, so he's got twice as much hours in his week. But yeah, absolutely. Dave's such an encouragement. Love bouncing things off of him, and love hearing him preach.
Amen to that. Also, just for reference here, also another beloved Dallas Cowboys fan. So I got to give Dave a big shout out there.
Yeah, we talked about that before too. I don't know how Dave is a Dallas Cowboys fan. He grew up in New Jersey
I
and
know.
from Pittsburgh. He grew up in Pittsburgh. How are you a Cowboys fan?
Well, I grew up in gay cities, so I can't say anything. So,
Yeah.
ironically, Dave and I last year were at the same game. We were actually in Nashville watching them play the Titans. And somehow I got on social media and saw a picture of him and his wife at the game. And so I'm searching all over the stadium trying to find out where they're at. We were actually pretty close to each other in a similar section, and I still never got a chance to see. But we laughed about that later on. So I had to give him a big shout out. Go Cowboys. So next on the list, obviously one of the originators, so to speak, a deeply rooted conference, and a guy who has had a big hand in helping organize this one for sure this year. But Josh Banks of Shepherd's Rock Bible Church. Very fortunate to know Josh. Like you said, I had a chance to sit down with him. A mutual friend of ours who, and you had joked about this earlier, the Joshes who hold the record for being on the podcast. A mutual friend of ours, Josh Tompkins, is the guy who actually got me in contact with Josh Banks, and they had went to the Masters together, the seminary, and met there. Funny enough, you're talking Josh Tompkins living in the Pound, Wise County area there, Big Stone Gaps, where he pastors now, and Josh Banks living in Gay City had never met one another, fly all the way to California, end up in the same room together, and so they kind of hit it off there. But pretty neat how God orchestrated that. But yeah, can't say enough about Josh. I've actually had the privilege of teaching his kids in high school, which is really neat. So, that reflects a lot, I think, on parenting, and you can pick that up really quickly in the sons that I've had a chance to teach there. But huge encouragement. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Josh is one of the best out there. Like you mentioned, he's got a book out there right now. Yes, it matters, which is it's done really well. G3 was kind enough to publish that, and we're actually able to get that going again down at the G3 conference. He actually had a booth down there, and that was really neat to see that. He's getting some good feedback a lot from a lot of people. He's had a chance to be on some certain podcasts and actually write for G3 and their website, which is really neat. And I can't say enough about the good work they're doing there in Kingsport. And we mentioned earlier they were hosting last year the conference, so they were kind enough to do that. And so, anything you want to add to that? I mean, I just think the world of Josh and what he's done for our ministry, and just a really down to earth, nice guy. I mean, I can't say that enough. Here's a man that's got a doctorate degree and could probably talk circles around me theologically, but you'd never pick up on that when you talk to him. He's always got time for you and always a good encouragement.
Yeah, another guy who's bivocational.
Yeah,
I mean, that he has a doctor in expository preaching, and he's a roofer. You
Yes.
know, yeah, he's not an ivory tower doctorate.
No.
Um, but yeah, such an encouragement. And yeah, Shepherd's Rock were fantastic hosts last year. They were so helpful, so gracious. It was great. Um, and we'll get to the location for this year in a little bit, but they were fantastic hosts. And yeah, that's why we immediately after the conference last year, I said, "Hey Josh, would I really want you to do an expository preaching seminar?" And Damon got with Josh, put it together, got a date for it, and yeah, we just had that a couple of months ago. So praise
Yeah.
God for all things deeply rooted.
Yeah, really gleaned a lot from that. I can't encourage people enough to go back and listen to those. I thought the world of what he said there, and just for my money, the second one I thought was tremendous. I mean, I had a lot of time for that one and have went back over it a lot myself. And speaking of that, number 8 on the list is the guy talking right now. So I will be invited back. Thank goodness I didn't shoot myself in the foot last year. So they've been kind enough to bring me back. But excited to be a part of it. Really looking forward to it. Glad this is going on. You know, if I had to say something to the Deeply Rooted Conference, I just appreciate the fact that people are getting together, like minded, for the benefit of everybody, and open to all these people. I thought last year went great. Just great fellowship with people. Really enjoyed our time there. Love seeing a lot of old faces, hadn't seen in a while, which is really neat, and meeting a lot of new people. And honestly, that's probably been one of the better benefits of the Deeply Rooted Conference, and we've talked about that a lot so far. We've just been able to meet some fabulous people so far that we've just not come in contact with, and God has providentially put that together, and He's been very kind in that. And so I'm looking forward to meeting new people this year that I have not got to meet before, and making some new friends. And so I'm excited about that. But as far as the schedule, let's go ahead and tackle that really quickly. It is November 10th and 11th. We are going to do 2 days this year as opposed to one last year. Um, let's talk about location and times, and then we'll explain the 10th and 11th. So, where are we having Deeply Rooted Conference this year?
So our friends at Grace Point Fellowship, it's on VFW Road in Kingsport, just off Fort Henry Drive. If you're coming from Kingsport, if you cross past Fort Patrick Henry Dam, it'll be almost immediately to the left.
Yeah,
Um, I visited their facilities a few weeks ago. They're going to be fantastic. We're going
yeah,
to be able to have the exhibitor booths in the same main auditorium. So I think they're going to get a lot of exposure. A lot of folks visiting the booths. We'll have room for some breakout sessions, like you mentioned. But we're going to try to kick things off 5 to 6 on Friday will be kind of a meet and greet fellowship time. We're gonna start the events at 6 o'clock on Friday evening because we want to pack as much as we can into Friday and Saturday. So we're gonna kick it off Friday night. Tentatively scheduled, we've got Mike Abendroth doing 2 sessions on Friday night, and we've got Sean Morris doing 1 session on Friday night. We'll have a little break in there. We'll be singing just like before. Um, and then at 8:30 on Saturday morning, we'll kick things off. Everybody else will be going. Normally, when we bring somebody in to a conference, a lot of times you have that keynote speaker, so to speak,
right.
finish things off. Well, Mike's going to have to catch a plane roughly around noon. So that's why we've got him doing 2 sessions on Friday night. We'll have him doing another session on Saturday morning. We got Josh Banks on Saturday morning. We've got some breakout sessions coming. Dave Rossetti, Damon Joseph doing a breakout session. We got Greg Sircone. We got Vern Hall, I think, doing one on evangelism. I know Damon, he was excited to do a session on parenting,
Yeah,
insurance. And then So some of those breakout sessions will be duplicated,
Right.
morning and an afternoon session. Some of them will only have one spot. We're going to do our best to try to record everything. So we'll try to incorporate some various recording personnel from the various churches to try to get all of those sessions recorded. Um, and then in the afternoon, I already mentioned the breakout sessions in the afternoon, but Vern's going to have a main session, and then Damon Joseph this year is going to close us out.
Awesome. And again, that's a good point you made about the breakout sessions. If you can't make it to one and some of them are duplicated, that gives you the opportunity if you want to catch one person and then maybe later on in the afternoon or vice versa. So don't feel like you might get left out. And like you said, we're going to do our very best to record. So we know you can only be at one place at one time, and we understand that. So maybe you can't make Saturday, maybe you can only make Saturday, vice versa, and maybe you can only get to a few sessions. We're going to do our best to make sure that we get it out there to you. I'm very confident we'll probably put quite a bit of this on the podcast, so there'll be different avenues that you can get it. So it should be a good time, and really looking forward to that. So again, just back in Kingsport this year, November 10th and 11th. Going to be there. Really excited about that. So um, we've had a lot of people that have pitched in donations, and really quickly, maybe a couple people you want to highlight who have really helped out the conference, whether it be donation of resources, funds, what have you. Like who needs to be recognized right now?
Well, I could recognize my mom. She's she is every time I see her, she's like, "Here, this is for the conference, honey." Um, so, but nonetheless, there have been several individuals donate some funds. There have been some businesses donate some funds. We're gonna put some of that info in the program of events that you'll be getting when you come to the conference. Um, some of the churches that we've already mentioned have donated some funds, um, but a lot, time. You've heard what we've already said about guys like Damon and Josh and Vern just giving their time
Yeah,
to all these things. And I also want to give a big shout out to, we talked earlier about, hey, why do we charge for this? We don't mention that we've had like probably a dozen events throughout the year related to Deeply Rooted.
right,
We've had 5 Deeply Rooted youth meetings. And since I always have to qualify Deeply Rooted youth with it's not just for youth, I'm thinking we might need to rename it. What do you think?
yeah. It may need we may
Uh,
need a better qualifier for it. Yeah,
maybe Deeply Rooted equip or,
yeah,
something like that. But and we've had that at multiple locations. The pastors' fellowships where people have been encouraged. The expository preaching conference. We're trying to do as much as we can and give as much as we can. Giving out books, giving out a lot of free tickets to the conference as well. But I don't want to miss anybody that's donated. We've had a lot of publishers donate a lot of books.
right,
Chapel Library. This is for this year's conference. I'm not even mentioning last year's conference. What we were given for that, but just this year alone, Chapel Library, Moody Publishing, Banner of Truth, Ligonier Ministries, Reformation Heritage Books, Particular Baptist Heritage Books, they've all donated stuff for this year's conference. I'm super excited about the quality of materials.
hmm,
Um, since that's another reason we encourage people to sign up really early. I got an email from a publisher earlier today, and the first question is, how many people?
right,
I've got a response like, well, we have this many registered. I don't know. I got to count and see how many are registered, but we're anticipating this many. We've had this many people's brothers, mothers, uncles say we're coming to the conference, but I can't say, oh, well, we've got 300 registered if I've only got, say, 100. I don't
right.
know. But that's something. And the earlier people register, the more we can tell these ministries, oh yeah, we've got these people coming. You can come down, do a booth, or you can donate resources. So a lot of the books, we'll probably have books for everybody of some. Others, it may be, hey, well, one per family on, this book and this book or something. But my guess is every person's probably going to walk out of there with at least three, maybe 4 or 5 books.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I know last year people were walking out with armfuls, like sometimes, which again, some bought, some, they had won and got as the day went on. So yeah, you're not going to walk out of there empty handed. I can promise you that. So please show up. Plenty of good stuff. And like you said, quality stuff. This is not just cheap, what's left on a shelf somewhere. Like these guys have really put forth a good effort and their best foot here. So looking forward to a lot of those things being handed out this year and what people can get their hands on. So um, other than that, as far as the donations go, and we want to certainly thank all those people that have given, like you said, whether it be money, time, resources, what have you. It's a big tent that takes a lot to get this thing together, and so I know it's not anything where thousands and thousands and thousands of people may show up, but it does take a lot to put this together and a lot of time, and so we're very fortunate for that. By God's grace, I think we're going to have a really good one again this year. And I'm looking forward already to even the third one ahead of time. I mean, like, we are fortunate enough that things continue to go well and God continues to be kind and provide. And so we'll have more information about that. So another reason to show up to this year's conference is to hear breaking news, I guess, so to speak. So we've got some things up our sleeve that we're working on that I think people will be pleased with that we haven't talked about here tonight, that I'm really looking forward to, that I think will make our Deeply Rooted Conference even better and more efficient and probably more professional and more functional for people. So that'll be coming down the pipeline in a few weeks, Lord willing. So anything else you want to add to what we've covered here tonight, brother?
Just want to let people know we are 501c3 charitable organization.
Yeah.
We want you to give sacrificially to your church. If you have ministries that you support, keep supporting them. But as I've heard said before, we don't want your money, but if you have any multimillionaire relatives, we'll take their money.
Yeah,
Um,
buddy.
but the idea is if we had a few donations here or there, we could make this a much less expensive, or we could make it free based on that. Um, but the Lord's going to provide as the Lord provides, and we're not going to come begging for money. We've been blessed with
Right.
so many donations. But like I said, hey, if you got a billionaire friend, send them our name.
There you go. Hey, find us online before you get out of here. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel and on Apple Podcasts. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe, hit that like button, leave a review. That'll help us get the word out to other people. It also helps. I know you don't want to hear this, but it does help the algorithm, and it does help us get out what we're doing here at Deeply Rooted Podcast and Deeply Rooted Conference. You can find us on Facebook. Check out Deeply Rooted Podcast, the page there, but you can also find Deeply Rooted Conference. You can join all the groups there if you'd like to as well. Find Justin online, find me online. We've got multiple accounts, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now. You can also find Deeply Rooted Conference on Instagram, all over the place. So lots of opportunity to get involved. You can email us. You can email me here for the podcast. That's DRIGW18 at gmail.com. Or you can directly email at the conference, which is deeplyrootedconference at gmail.com. So multiple avenues to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to register. That's over at deeplyrootedpodcast.com. You can register there online. If you haven't checked out the website, please do. We've got blog posts on there, all the archived episodes from every single one of our podcast episodes are there, including all of our speakers who have been interviewed so far. So if you want to go back and listen to those guys tell the elongated story about their life, testimonies, things along those lines, please do so. That being said, that's all I've got for us this evening, unless, Justin, you've got anything else you want to add.
Yeah, also on the YouTube page, you've got the messages from last year's Deep
Yes.
Rooted Conference. So those are loaded up. And I do want to say our best friend is the share button on social media.
Yeah.
Um, Likes are lovely, but if you hit that share button, that means the world to us. We appreciate it that you're letting people know about this conference. So if you're the Deeply Rooted Conference page on Facebook is facebook.com/, Deeply Rooted Conference. Instagram, it's at Deeply Rooted Con, Deeply Rooted CON altogether. And on Twitter/X, it's Deeply Rooted Con. So likes are great. Retweets are golden. We appreciate each and every one.
Yeah. Well said. Guys, thank y'all so much for listening. This one's in the books. So until next time, we love y'all. Hope you have a great week in Jesus.